are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Life is not easy. It never was, and it never will be. A good life takes grit. Prioritize who you are and who you want to be, because life isn't fair, and a little grit can make all the difference. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
He's lying, folks. He's had diarrhea for like 2 days, and
it's sleep deprived.
He's working.
We haven't slept. Haven't left the office.
He's working overtime. It's killing him. Unpaid overtime, because I don't pay Brent for overtime. It's just normal time.
Just time.
Just time. No, we've been working really hard on the bear hunt videos that we're putting on YouTube, and Brent's learning a lot about video editing, because I need him to be able to video edit. So he's in training. A little family business here. How's it coming, Brent?
You know, I was thinking, whenever I think of someone who's in training, and I'm thinking of Disney or Hollywood films, the person in training is never having a good time.
I think you're having fun.
I mean, I'm not crying.
Yeah.
No, it's fun.
We really have been all work and no play, which makes Jack a dull boy.
Yes,
but
so my wife tells me.
But we're just trying to get this content out the door. I'm backed up against leaving to New Zealand. The bear vids are cool. We got a really good response on the one we just published yesterday. Some of the comments, for those that haven't been following along, I did a backcountry
DIY
do-it-yourself public land bear hunt with Jeff Lusky and Ryan Lampers. We podcasted about the gear we used post-hunt, and I did a pre-hunt podcast on gear. Mm-hmm. And backpacking food, camera gear, the whole bit. And we did the hunt, and the three of us tagged out on 5 bears. And
just 5.
And it was awesome. So the hunt, the content we captured from the hunt it's great, and I really wanted to get it out with a quick turnaround, because I'm leaving to New Zealand in like 5 days with Ryan Lampers for another do-it-yourself hunt, where
we're going to capture lots of more really cool footage.
And I don't have time to cover the bear stuff when I get back, and and these stuff tends to sit around and not get published, and it kills me. So we've been working hard trying to get those videos out and that content out, and still run the show and the podcast and all that. So I should tell you, today's podcast is with Cody Jones
of Wild Arrow Archery.
Yep, and I got a new RX-3 for this New Zealand hunt that I'm going on. And a little backstory: the New Zealand hunt, I mountain hunting in New Zealand in the Southern Alps was incredible. This year, I wanted to go back, but I wanted to do it all on my own as much as I could, right? Mm-hmm. And so Ryan Lampers and I have been doing our research and kind of reaching out and getting connections and figuring out how we can go to New Zealand and hunt tar and chamois for, as inexpensively as possible. Mm-hmm. So bringing all of our own gear, own food, everything. And it looks like our tentative plan, we have 2 options to us. One is, we hit it's airfare to the airport, and then from there, it's a vehicle to to some place where we get out and hike. Or we go to an airstrip, and we charter a helicopter to drop camp us for 2 weeks in the middle of nowhere. Either way, the cost is, it's competitive, and so we're just kind of weighing the options. But it's going to be a cool hunt, and I think we're going to try to do it for very, very, I think it'll surprise people how inexpensive and then what a cool adventure it is. So we're going to try to document the whole thing. But after hunting tar, having hunted mountain goat, having been to a lot of different places, man, it's tough to beat that hunt for just the sheer adventure of it. Especially if you like mountain animals like sheep and goat. Tar is, like Remy Warren said, like the poor man's goat hunt, sheep hunt. So it's going to be a cool adventure. I think we're going to do that hunt for cheaper than I can hunt bear on Prince of Wales with a tag, so it's incredible. It's airfare is really the cost, the main cost.
Getting there.
Yeah. So we'll explain our strategy when we get back and kind of how that went. But I got a new RX-3 for the trip from Hoyt. Got it down at the shop today with Cody, and he basically set it all up from start to finish. And the video version of the podcast is going to be a little better. I mean, if you want to see what we're talking about, I try to remind Cody throughout the show that we're providing an audio experience for people, but it's such a hands-on visual thing. It's easy to forget that people listening don't know what you're talking about when you say this is connected to this, and it's really great, and you're like, what's this? You can't see it. So hopefully it's for those that are listening, it's still of a lot of value for you. But yeah, you'll get a little more out of it if you watch it. Mm-hmm. He talks about what the components we're putting on, why, and he sets it up in minutes.
It was fast.
And he tunes it within 4 arrows. It's paper tuned. And I'm shooting the same arrows I shot out of my RX-1, my 80-pound RX-1. This is a 70-pound RX-3. My arrows are 278 feet per second out of the RX-1. They're 270 feet per second out of this new bow. But it's a lighter poundage. Mm-hmm. And I can explain later why maybe I went with... I'm just trying things out, really. Mm-hmm. It shoots really nice. And Cody kind of goes into, like I said, the components and how he tuned it. And he just kind of went step by step. We just walked through it. So I hope it's useful. And for those that are listening, that it makes sense. Because everybody's at a different level with archery. And... so some of the terms might be beyond people, and some it might be too juvenile for some. Some might be way, way beyond the level of this podcast. So in that case, this might not be for you. So I want to read some comments. I want to thank people who have watched the bear videos. Got a lot of great comments. Bob Alvarez says, "Best work yet, Brian and crew. We need more, please," in all caps. I particularly like the product descriptions and breakdown. Your films always make me feel like I'm there with you in the woods. Love your work and the message of harvesting quality food for you and your families. In this video, it's different than anything I've ever done before. And I did put a lot of gear information sprinkled throughout the podcast or throughout the video. So as I just, I watch stuff and I'm like, man, what's the thing they're using there? Or what's that? Or which knife is that? And we just answer those questions preemptively. So people really loved it. Amazing. Really like the tiny info bits you've added. Would make it even better if there were metric conversions as well. Really enjoyed this video. This is Luke McCreary. Didn't have all the pretty B-roll shots like a lot of your videos, and it's just fine. Well shot and edited. Looked like a real dream of a bear hunt. This was an amazing show. I love the little information pop-ups. Madman Podcast writes, "Yo, this was amazing. I always liked the in-field updates. Thanks, guys. Turkey season is over in Pennsylvania. Now it's backpacking and trout fishing time. We caught a bunch of tiger trout yesterday, cross between a PA brook and a brown trout. Stay gritty." Right on. Right on, brother. Jeremy Hess says, "Sick video." Tiny Small Apache says, "Damn hippies. Ha ha. Lovely footage. Greetings from the Netherlands." Yeah, there were some hippie comments in the video. Yeah. So anyway, folks, go check it out if you haven't seen it. I think we're trying to get episode 2 dropped tomorrow. This podcast goes out tomorrow. Trying to get the video will probably go out tomorrow. Just it might be at midnight. It might be at 5 p.m.
We'll see. Let's find out.
Yeah. But the goal is to get that one out, and then hopefully the other one by Friday or Monday. I think there's 3. We're going to do 3 videos. So it's a cool hunt. I hope you guys enjoy that. Any reviews and comments and likes you can give us on YouTube. That's great. And it really lets me know if we should spend more time doing that sort of content, So appreciate it. Appreciate everything. Brent, we only have one other announcement.
The Mountain Ops Movie Night.
The Mountain Ops Movie Night in Portland.
June 27th.
June 27th. Join us for a killer night. We're showing my film Untamed, which is my hunt in British Columbia. It's the people who have seen it have just raved about it. It's a solid film. It'll make you laugh, have a good time. Plus, you'll get lots of free swag. You can win all kinds of stuff. So come to that if you're in the Portland Northwest, Washington area. Come on down for a good movie night. You can get tickets at mountainops.com. Go to the events tab. Go to Portland. Get tickets. It's going to be cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also showing the film from Kodiak Island, the Sitka blacktail hunt I did with Leopold. We've got that film nearly completely wrapped up, and that is going to be a killer video. It's just a fun camp. Adam Foss was on that trip, and they just captured footage so beautifully. Like, I'm an aspiring video camera guy.
Yeah.
Adam's I've been there, made it guy. But we captured a lot of humor and realness, and there's storms and tsunamis, and it's just an adventure. Mm-hmm. So we have that film too. So 2 adventure films. They're not entirely relatable because a lot of guys can't afford to go on a moose hunt. I never expected to go on a moose hunt in my life, and if I did, I knew it would be probably once in a lifetime, and I'd have to save for it quite a bit. But, you never know where life takes you. And so it's not a film that a lot of people, or a hunt that a lot of guys will ever go on. And I get that. But it's such an adventure. It's such an aspiring kind of piece, that aspirational piece. It's such an aspirational piece. I think it's just really fun to watch. And then the Kodiak film, that's actually very doable for people. There's a lot of do-it-yourself opportunities. We had Abe Henderson on here. He does DIY Alaska, and he has some stuff that really lines out how to do that on your own. If you go to his website and purchase some of his packages where he teaches you how to do it. But that hunt, very doable. May not be the way we did it, but it's close. And, man, it's a cool trip. We were there with Cole Kramer, and he's an incredible, experienced guide. It was great to I just asked him questions like every hour, every Cole, what about this?
Why are you doing this, Cole?
Yeah. Why are you doing this, Cole? Just a fun time. Anyway, that's it. Hope you enjoy this podcast. We appreciate all the support. Leave us a review on iTunes if you haven't done that already. Thank you, and stay gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm at Wild Arrow today with my friend Cody, and we are going to mess with my new bow.
Oh, yeah.
Got an RX-3 here, and here is my old build, my RX-1, and, there's some differences here between the 2 bows, and Cody, this podcast, we're going to kind of walk through basically what I've got last year, what I'm going to put on this bow this year. And so here you go. If you're watching, you can see it, but I've got the RX-1. It's 80 pounds. And I like the 80 pounds. I like the draw cycle on this bow, but I feel like I just don't need to pull that much weight with how efficient these bows are. And so I went to a 70 pound this year with this bow, and I love this RX-1. It took me a while to get good at using it and kind of figure out how it worked, but I killed a bunch of animals with it, and I like how it shoots. It blows through everything. So it'll be cool to run the RX-3 though at a lower poundage and have them both, So that said, how do these bows compare, Cody?
Well, they're both really, really similar. The big thing that they kept this year was their cam system. They just kind of took everything that they could have improved or they thought they could make better from last year's RX-1, learned from it, and then tweaked this one a little bit. So now this is the ZT Pro cam, a little bit more efficient. Still the wide stance like you got on your RX-1, but the yoke system's a little different. They changed the pivot point here. From last year, they had a big aluminum barrel. They went a little bit lighter to this piece here. That changed a little bit. Riser is completely new this year from the RX-1. This is a whole new complete riser, a little beefier than the RX-1 was. They shifted the shock pod forward a little bit, which took out a lot more vibration, actually. Very similar roller guard. They changed the grip this year, which I like. This is now a interchangeable grip system, and it's also shiftable. So you can shift this grip. If you remove this screw right here, you can take the grip off and shift it left and right for any sort of hand torque that you may have. So that's a big improvement this year as well. The overall stance of the bow is wider. It's definitely a little beefier.
Yeah, it is.
It balances a little bit different in your hand. I really enjoy it. It's still a low below center grip, which points really well. But just a few things that I think overall is going to improve the way that the bow feels. It's definitely quieter. That is one huge thing that they did this year. Is it's a lot quieter than the RX-1.
So what are the things you like about the RX-3 compared to the RX-1? It's quieter.
The noise. Yeah, the noise was very noticeable right off the bat. That was a big deal. The grip system is probably my biggest.
What about tuning? What have you found as far as tuning and setting them up compared to the RX-1?
Tuning wise, this bow tunes really, really well. There was a lot of talk last year about the RX-1s and their tuning. Some guys had a really good tuning one. The next guy had a little bit of fight with it. Usually that was speed weight related. We had a few that had the speed weights moving around a little bit. Okay. But overall, once you kind of got that taken care of, the RX-1s tuned well. The RX-3 just tunes even easier. Speed weights I haven't had any issues with. They added a little bit of dampening to the string. They changed the durometer here as well, the slap shot. The overall bow itself is a lot quieter, so just a little bit more enjoyable to shoot.
I like that. So this year, I've been running various components. I've had a lot of, I use this AAE Prophecy Rest, and I ran the Garmin Zero, which I'm going to put on this bow, and I'm going to run the fixed pins on the other bow. This is the, right here, this is just a black gold sliding pin sight, it's just awesome for long range and, the Total Archery Challenge and some of those events where you're poking out beyond, 90 yards, which is about where I can get the Garmin to go.
Right.
You just got to have this kind of setup.
Yep.
Not that I'm shooting animals really at that range, but there's a lot of states where the Garmin isn't legal.
Yes.
And so I have a setup for those states, and then I have a setup for where I can use the Garmin because I love that sight.
Right.
And so I'm going to put the Garmin on this build, and then what rest do you recommend? We talked about a little bit.
The Hoyt Ultra Rest from QAD is the number one rest that I like putting on these bows. Not only is it tuned from the factory generally with a QAD rest, the Hoyt bow is they're gonna tune it with their Hoyt rest that they're sponsoring, right? And so QAD builds it. They build it for the Hoyt, but what they do is
would legit. It's not just because it's Hoyt. Put it on.
No. I put that on a slew of my bows, right? This guy right here. The reason is because it's very simple, full containment. Also, what they've done is they've changed the tail right here of the mounting bolt system so that when you put this on, it's going to sit flush with the back of the riser. So it's not going to pivot if it gets bumped.
Gotcha.
So it's designed to mate well to the back of the plate here.
They're built with those two things in mind.
Yes, with those in mind. It is adjustable up, down, left, and right. But the nicest thing about QAD is the way that the rest mechanism inside works. You can shoot that rest it's a cable driven, so you can actually just leave the launcher down, throw an arrow in, and draw back. As you draw, that cable is going to pull that rest and it's going to lift that launcher up. Then you could fire it from that point. Or what I like to do, as soon as I lock my arrow onto the string, and it's sitting in the launcher grooves itself, I will actually reach over with my thumb and push
raise
the
it.
lever and raise it. Yeah. So that I get the full containment. Cool thing about that is I get the full containment. It's quiet. There's felt. It's not going to bounce around. I have a little bit of room there for errors. But the best feature is the letdown. There are some other rests on the market that will lock up and pre-lock. But when you draw and let down, they will fall no matter what. This one's nice because it doesn't. It knows the difference between a shot and a letdown.
Gotcha.
So that's huge. You draw back, you get a shot, and you know maybe you got to hurry and let down, take 2 steps and draw again. That you're not going to have that rest bouncing around on you all the time.
That's one reason why I like the AAE as well, is because you raise it and it stays up.
Right.
But a lot of guys, if you forget to raise it, it stays down.
Yes, that
So
particular rest, you have to lock that before you can even fire it. Yep.
And I've only made a mistake with it once.
Right.
And it was at the Total Archery Challenge where I forgot to raise it and shot one into the dirt. I could imagine that happening on an animal at some point. I just shot it so much that it was second nature at some point.
Right.
But this one has that fail proof in there. It'll raise if you forget to raise it. It'll do it.
Yep, it will definitely raise, and then it does the letdown. I don't believe the AAE ones have the letdown. As soon as you let it down or shoot it, it comes down.
No, it doesn't. It
Does
stays
it stay up?
Yep.
Okay.
It stays up, which is nice. And one of the things I really liked about it, because you come back real silent, and you let it down real silent, and it stays put.
On the Prophecy. It was the Pro Drop one that would fall. That's the one I was thinking about.
Okay. The full containment, I can't remember, but the full containment thing isn't that great on that AAE compared to this. It can fall out of those little hooks, and if you put that little guard over the top, it'll block your fletchings. Didn't quite have a deep enough groove for that.
Yeah. This is a lot wider, or a lot narrower, versus that AAE. So you get the nice narrow launcher here. So that's not going to be as...
The other thing I ran into on the AAE, it's really flexible right here, and I love the setup. But one thing that it did give me trouble with is it would wear it down right here in the groove, in the slot here. The arrow would, if I put felt there, it would last, I don't know, for 4 or 5 shots. And then that felt would just come off.
Yep.
Because there's so much friction on the shot.
Yep, there is. Yeah, it's a good launcher. It had target archery in mind, where you get a nice flexible launcher to help with flight. This particular rest will come to full 90, but it also stays up just long enough to give you all the support that you need, but it doesn't put a lot of pressure on here. A lot of people think that it does just by it being full 90, but you don't. You don't get a bunch of pressure on that middle of the launcher.
And eventually what happens when you don't have felt and other things on there, especially if you're in the whitetail woods and you're coming back on it, man, that carbon shaft on that plastic, and it just... You can hear that. Your deer...
Certain coatings on arrows, you'll hear it come across the label.
And it's just a foreign sound. It doesn't... they just pick it out. So my earlier AE rest didn't do that. I have it on the...
Because there's a lot of guys out there now that don't know, right? They come into the shop, they're like, do I need one? Do I not need one? And... There's
no... From my experience, shooting out beyond like 50 yards...
Yeah.
The stabilizer makes all the difference.
Yeah.
All the difference. And if I'm poking out 85, 90, 100, the stabilizer is a game changer.
Yep. Definitely situational
Especially with the back bar for me. There's just, the bow will just kind of torque or do something funky when it's not balanced right.
Less input I have to put into the bow, whether that's leveling out the sight, creating a little bit of torque because all my quiver weight and everything's bolted onto one side. But like you said, if you're doing close yard shots, ground blinds, tree stand stuff, 30, 40 yards maybe max. Yeah, it's not quite as critical. You'll still see guys out there that have big, huge stabilizers. You watch the Outdoor Channel and they got these big, giant stabilizers in a tree stand, and you're like, what are they doing? But you generally see that guy, he's a target shooter as well. So he just transfers that over into his hunting setup. But you can do, that's the nice thing about a carbon bow, to touch on that for a second, is the riser system on this one did go a little beefier than last year, right? It's a little bit thicker, but they did that for a reason. The pocket system, the cam system, everything up top, everything out the bottom, kind of creates kind of a dumbbell effect the center of the bow is where the lighter part of it is. And so this bow naturally just aims really well by itself, right? And if you're running a tight spot like you are, tight spot's nice because you can run it tighter to the bow. You don't get as much shift this way, right? So if you set it up correctly, you run that quiver, you run it in tight to the bow, the way that the bow just naturally aims, being able to shift that grip, you can probably point that bow really well without having to have a bunch of stabilizers on it, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I found with this one here,
Right.
I run that pretty tight
Yep.
up there, and it just sits there balanced like right now. I'm not really torquing it at all. It's just there, and so what I found was when I started shooting it without a stabilizer, it shot well. That Carbon Defiant doesn't shoot as well without a stabilizer. It just not at all.
Yep.
And this one, when I talked to the guys at Hoyt, they were describing how it's balanced and the things they did to the lower pocket in order to make it so the whole thing would balance.
This pocket down here is actually wider and bigger than the top pocket.
And they said, I think they added weight down here.
Yes. So you take this, and not only did you widen it out, but you also took the shock pods and moved them from inside the pocket to the outside, right? And so generally this bow would lean this way. Right, like your RX-1 just did a little bit.
Right.
By shifting this forward, it'll help bring that down. So not only is it going to fix this movement here, but the width and being able to shift the grip, you will also fix this movement and this movement. So you get both. So by itself, without anything on it, that bow balances extremely well. So that's a huge advantage to Carbon, the natural aim and balance of it. Most of your weight's at the end. You can widen it out. You can beefen it up.
And I like the idea of not running a stabilizer, although I like a little weight, because it helps you hold a little steadier. But then it gets to that point where too much weight makes you hold less steady.
Yep. So you got to find that balance to what works the best for you, right? And so a lot of the stabilizers nowadays have those adjustable aluminum weights on them. So you can move them, shift them, play with them, put them where you want. The whole goal is to be able to draw the bow back, aim it, get that bubble as level as possible without a bunch of effort. That way, when you're in the hunt, you got so many other things to worry about, right? Wind, if they're looking at you, all that kind of stuff. And so I like to have my bows as balanced as quickly as possible. I don't have to put a bunch of effort into thinking about it, and then I can execute a shot more effectively. So this one, you could probably get away without a stabilizer and shoot really well. Like you said, 50 and in, you probably don't need to run one. If you do, very, very minimal on that particular bow. So
when I was asking you earlier before we put the headsets on, I'm like, what's your biggest, you like the bow and everything about it. What's the one thing about it that you're just not really happy with? And you said the price.
Well,
the price tag.
Yeah, that's the biggest complaint that you'll get is the price tag. Which I get, right? I mean, not working at a bow shop, spending hard-earned money, and say you got a kid, you got multiple kids, you got a family, you got a bunch of different things, right? $1,600 is expensive to just go drop on a bow, especially if you've got all the other stuff going on. Now, the nice thing about it is say you are that guy, and you don't buy a bow every year. You buy one and you have it for 6 years, right? Then it's an investment at that point. That bow will last you that long. You can have it for the rest of your life. You don't have to buy.
Be those bows didn't last that long.
Right.
They just would rattle apart over time, all the torque and power in them. They're just they weren't designed to.
Risers would slowly start to tweak over time. I get a bunch of old bows that would come in and the risers just couldn't handle it, right? That Carbon bow, with the cycle testing that they put it through, the dry fire testing that they put it through, you could basically we're at a stage now where you could buy that bow and have it the rest of your life.
One of the things I've noticed with my bow, both my Hoyts, is I've traveled across the world with them. I put them on horseback. I've dropped them. I've dropped them so many times. I beat the crud out of my stuff. All my gear from Sitka to, they're like, dude, how did you put a hole in that? I'm like, I do. So I beat the heck out of all my stuff, and that Hoyt stays tuned and stays ready to go despite just beating the crud out of it.
Right.
So
It's
I really do feel like the way I treat my gear, that does matter to me. It's so funny. I was talking to some guys the other day because we just got back for that rifle bear hunt that we did, and guys talking about going out, having the most brilliant opportunity presented to them and shoot their rifle after all this money, time, and effort gone into the backcountry. And Miles hiked a week out there. Bear comes up, perfect scenario, bear your dreams, and you miss it 3 times because the scope was off.
Mm-hmm.
Scope was on when the trip started. Somehow getting strapped to a backpack.
Yep. Bumped in travel,
mm-hmm. whatever, 3 feet off.
Yep.
Well, when that happens, it's like that's where having gear that doesn't change on me is big. So the sight, being able to stay strong, but also the tuning and just the setup on the bow being the same despite all that.
Yep.
Same with a gun.
If you're going to use this bow like it's intended to be used, right? It's a $1,600 bow. It's the elite of the elite, and it's that way for a reason. If you're going to be traveling with it, you're going to be beating it up, you're going to be in the backcountry, you're going to be following with it, you're going to be putting a lot of time and effort behind this bow. The carbon's going to just hold up to that. Also, weather. It doesn't get cold. It's warm to the touch.
I know, but a lot of people. The funny thing, I talk
love
about
that feature.
A lot
I know it's like God, justify it, but it's
when I'm hunting
so
cold
nice.
weather. I just don't ever want to shoot something not carbon anymore. I hate the feel of aluminum in cold weather. It sucks.
It does.
I'm a weenie when it comes to that.
Yeah,
and it's night and day.
Well, I'll ask guys. They'll be like, "Well, that's really
like carrying
expensive."
an
I'm like,
ice
well,
cube.
what? I see him roll up in this truck. I'm like, "Well, why do you need those heated seats, leather seats, sunroof? Why do you need that?" And then they say the same thing. Well, once I've had it, I can't go back.
Yeah,
that's how a carbon bow is. Once you've shot one and you've hunted with it and you've actually put a bunch of time and money and effort into the hunts that you're going to go on and that sort of thing, this is an awesome bow. But the cool feature with Hoyt, and that not a lot of people know yet, or they just don't pay attention to, is the carbon bow is the top of their chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
You come down one step and you go to like a Helix aluminum. It's the same components.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is the riser. One's aluminum, one's carbon.
And I've been hearing a lot of guys say they feel like that Helix is one of the best bows.
Hands down, right? So this is for the guy that's going to do a bunch of backcountry hunting, backpack hunting, horse riding, or he's just going to hunt. He can even be a weekend warrior, but he does it every single weekend throughout the hunt. He's in cold weather. He puts a lot of use through it. He plans on shooting that bow for a few years. It's just going to hold up.
There's some dudes out there there's some great bows out there this year
mm-hmm.
and last year too.
Yeah.
From different manufacturers. So there's a lot of great options out there right now for bow hunters in general.
Right.
And I'm really impressed with what's come out.
Right.
And it's hard to justify. It's really tough to justify the cost of this when there's other bows out there that are also awesome.
Right. If you shoot the Helix next to that, I'll be flat out honest. They are very, very close to each other as far as how they feel. Carbon feels different. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different. And then you shoot the aluminum version of this, its little brother, and on the shot, I can't lie to a guy and be like, no, the carbon's way, way better. This bow's just designed for a specific purpose, right?
Yeah.
That purpose is you're going to have it for a long time. You're going to buy this bow, not change bows for 6 years, right? Or you're the guy that's just an extreme hunter. That is your thing that you do. So you're going to be putting a lot of miles onto this bow, throwing it, dropping it, kicking it. We have a guy that buys this carbon bow every year, and a Garmin. Mm-hmm. He's got the best durability story that I've ever heard of, right? He basically kicked it down a cliff. Hundreds of feet, bounced everywhere. Garmin and RX-1 last year. And it's just tumbling, bouncing, doing all that sort of thing. He brought it back in. Bow was completely fine. Garmin was completely fine. No glass broke, no nothing broke. And so he's same thing. He's like, that's what I spent that money for, right? Yeah. That one fall saved him.
Well, and I go to some pretty remote places and put out some serious work into getting there.
Yes, you're at a different place.
And
so
I can't have this break down on me.
Nope.
Can't have it fail.
Nope.
Well, let's get to putting it together, and we'll step away here for a minute, start messing around with it, and then we'll kind of walk folks through as you set up how you're doing it. What you run into, and we'll just start building her out. So, Cody, you made a couple little changes here.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about that.
Right out of the box, I like to go through the bow and make sure that everything's where it needs to be set to. Right? They do their absolute best to get them out as pristine as they can. But when you're pumping a bunch of bows out, there's a couple bows that come out just a little bit off, right? And so what I do is, first thing out of the box is I check the basics, right? I make sure it's bottomed out on the limb bolts, make sure that that's where we want it, maxed out. Check your draw length. You wanted this bow to be at 28. So what I did is, from the factory, they'll usually have a set setting on a particular cam size. So this is a number 2 cam. Nice thing about the number 2 cam for you is you're going to max this out at 28 inches. Okay, so that's going to be the longest post out of your options here, right? You're going to get A, you're going to go all the way through to G. Okay, G is the last post on here. This is your draw length at 28 inches. Nice thing about maxing out a cam like this is you're going to get the full potential of that cam, the maxed efficiency, right? It's not as crazy as it used to be, but there's a slight edge difference between starting a cam at your draw length and ending a cam at your draw length. It could be 4, 5, 6 feet per second. And so good thing is we're maxed out here. Also, I checked the cam synchronization. That's one thing that I like to set even right out of the box. That can change because your brand new strings and cables, they're going to move, they're going to settle, they're going to stretch a little bit. So I set them even to where the top cam and the bottom cam, when I roll these over, are both hitting my cables at the exact same time. Okay, that's a good starting point. I start there, shoot the bow a whole heck of a ton, let them start to break in. Usually one will come out and not contact the same as the other one. We set those back to square after 500 shots or so, and you're back to square one. So there's a lot of stuff. The nice thing about the system on this Hoyt is you have so much room for adjustability.
Yeah.
Okay, we start them out even. Some guys like to run the top cam slightly ahead. It will actually change the way the bow aims.
Yeah.
And so you have that capability with this bow. Cam and a half system is great for that. I can set the top one a little bit ahead. I can set them even. Even if they do come out a little bit, the cams will still fire the same. So I'll still get a good shot, even if they're not perfect. Also, what we've got on this cam on the ZT Pro, which they did offer it on the ZT cam on the RX-1, was you have a different set of modules that you can run on here for different let-offs. You can order these straight from the factory. You can change them out later with no bow press. What it does, though, is it goes from 85% let-off on these cams to 80% let-off to even 75% let-off, depending on your flavor, right?
Yep.
You're kind of like me. We talked about it. I like to feel a little bit of tension at the wall. I feel like it keeps me stable. It's like me taking both of my arms and putting between two walls and trying to stabilize myself, or the guys that do the Olympic rings that balance themselves out. There's some resistance there. So I like having the 80% modules on here because it gives me that good happy medium. It gives me the resistance weight at the back wall that I like because it lets you put a little bit of tension in the bow without much movement, but it also isn't so sloppy that you can get back and get lazy with it, right? The problem with getting lazy with it is you're going to fire a different shot. Some guys are at the front end of that lazy valley. Some are at the back end of that lazy valley. There's a little bit of movement that can occur, and I don't like that.
On the RX-1, I had extreme let-off.
Yes.
And I shot it like that for about a month or so, and I could not shoot it well.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
And I hated it. I actually hated it. And I actually like, I don't like a lot of let off. I don't shoot as well with a lot of let off. So in the shop, you have a few RX-1s or RX-3s. I was able to grab one out there, pull it back. And it's so funny, like with this one at 85, full draw, as soon as you get to that valley, it just poof, it dumps in.
It rolls into the valley.
And you kind of crash down, and then you're sitting there, and there's really no tension. It's so
you don't feel anything.
No,
you're just kind of there. Yeah,
I don't like that feeling.
Right.
It's not for me.
Yep.
Especially because I like to use back tension as I'm pulling.
You've been trying to develop that little bit of add a little bit of tension into the bow type of shot, back tension, and with 85% let off, it's hard to do that because you don't feel anything. You're kind of just there, like. The wall is stiff enough to where you don't feel it sponge. It's not spongy, but it's like you're just in a dead zone.
Yeah, it's Carbon Defiant had some sponge, so I could get in there and then just kind of pull a little bit against it and really, with that tension, really sink that pin.
You're like driving the pin through the dot. You can feel your separation, and then boom, the shot breaks.
With the RX-1, there's not any sponge, and so I'd come back, And with that extreme let off, I didn't have tension. And then so I'd try to pull, but there's no sponge. And then I'd create like wobble.
Yep.
And so when I switched the modules on the RX-1 and made the let off, I don't remember what we switched it to.
Yeah, I think we ran to 80s on that one.
Yeah.
We did 80s
it was
last
night
year
and day.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Yep. I hit it. I like how it doesn't dump into a valley. It just pulls even tension and just stops.
Yep.
When I'm hunting deer or whitetail or elk, and I want to be able to draw that bow so slow.
Yes.
And then when I get to the end, I want it to just stop.
Yep. Without that dump.
I don't want that dump. You can't control it.
Yeah.
You're pulling, and then it dumps.
Yeah, it's hard in those type of conditions, right? Target shooting in the backyard, and we do see that a lot where guys will get it and they're like, they're out here demoing bows, and they're like, I love the 85% let off.
It's tempting.
You tell them about this, but it's an evil temptress. You go out and you start shooting it, and then what happens is they get in that situation where their adrenaline's up a little bit, and they're not drawing that bow as smooth. It's not a controlled environment. It's a oh crap, and then depending on what rest they're shooting, their arrow could bounce, it could make noise.
Exactly.
Bunch of different things that can happen. And so with this being at 80, it's that happy medium. It'll change the rotation just enough. Mm-hmm. You don't get the dump, it stops. But it's enough to where if that bull comes in, right, you're chasing bulls and he comes in and he stops and he's right behind that tree because you draw just a little bit too soon, you have to wait for a second. It's not going to kill you, but it's enough to where then when he does come out, you have that tension there, you're ready.
And I just like being able to come to full draw as slow as a snail, and then anchor and have full control over that draw cycle. And then the tension helps me stay on target better.
Yep.
And even though, it's not as spongy as some other bows, it's enough. And with that tension, I'm just way more accurate. If the wind's blowing, right, and you've got, and you're pushing with your left hand against the riser, right, and you're pulling with your right hand, you create that tension in that system. It's easier for me to hold it tight if there's some tension. Not too much, because too much, and then you're just
too much, and you're shaking. You're shaking. You know when it's too much, right? And that 80 is perfect.
80 just seems, it's just right for me.
Yeah, it's perfect, right? I mean, if you come from the target world, right, a lot of your hunters, like half of the target archery guys out there, at least in the United States, are hunters as well, right? And you really start to learn what a little bit of tension in your system can create when you're trying to shoot accurately, right? And so the 80s is that perfect combination of both. It's a really smooth cam. The draw cycle is extremely smooth. There's no dump, but there's just enough tension where you're not going to get super tired, but it's going to give you that consistency. You're there.
And I can't believe the difference. You start messing around with different levels, and the bow feels like a completely different bow.
Yep.
They don't feel this. It feels like
it changes a lot, right?
Different.
My target bow that I shoot right now, I shoot it at 70% let off, right? 60 pounds, 70% let off. So my holding weight is really high. It creates that tension that I just aim at really well. And so, that's one thing about this bow is I advise guys to try it, and there are some shooters out there, even some pros, that don't like the push-pull method, that don't pull the back tension. For their cam system, they can run that 85% let off because they're more of like a roll through their shot or a squeeze through their shot. So everybody's different. The nice thing about this is it gives you that option. You could even take one further. You go 75% at the lowest, 85% at its highest. Well, you could even interchange those, and you can run an 85% module and a 75% peg and change it even more. So you can really set this bow up to aim and shoot how you want it to.
I like it.
So once we get the cam set, you know which let off you want. I got the cams set. They were the top cam was just a teeny bit ahead, right? It touched finish line essentially, just a little bit ahead of the bottom cam. So all I did is I had to just put one full twist into your control cable here, and boom, they were even. So they're that close out of the box. I probably could have tuned that bow really well, right where it was. But being a perfectionist like I am, I wanted to make sure that it was set perfectly even. I set that first, and then I'll check nuts and bolts, right? We're humans, right? You run these out of the assembly line, something might get missed. And so I'll go through and I'll check all of those sort of things. I'll make sure limb bolts are tight, make sure that modules are in the correct draw position, make sure that they're snug. Draw pegs. These cams have draw pegs in them. Always, always, always check your draw pegs. Even while shooting, periodically check them because they do have a tendency to rattle loose. And so I'll even take a little bit of blue Loctite, or, we've got some just little thread locker. Just a little bit of thread locker on those type of little pegs goes a long way.
Right.
And so once the cam's set, limbs are done, all the nuts and bolts are set where it needs to be, then it's accessory time.
Cool.
Time to start bolting on all the other stuff.
Awesome.
So I didn't put your felt on your rest yet, right? But the nice thing about this is it does come with really, really good felt. They have changed this felt a lot over the years. It used to be really fluffy, and it looked pretty, but it didn't last long. Now, it's really flat, really tight woven. It's awesome. I love this felt. I still will wrap over it with some serving just to keep it on there for a long, long time. I can run that for a year or two.
Really?
And not have to change it out.
And it's quiet.
Yes. Yep. Even shooting
that's
a
on
whole
the
bunch.
launcher.
Yep. That's on the launcher, and the containment arm on the top. One other thing that's super nice about this rest is you have two positions you can put it against the back of the riser. I like running it on the overdrop position. Okay, so what it does is it comes with this little plastic piece here that clicks into the riser, into the rest, and then it'll create a little buffer so that when you put this onto the bow, it's going to shift that shift point back just a little bit. Instead of being all the way up close like this, it shifts it back just a little bit. And what that does is it changes the launcher point of the arrow shaft. When that arrow comes off that rest, once we put this on and we put that little spacer in there, that's going to allow us, when we put this to the riser, to move that launcher position back just a little bit, right? Without that spacer in there, you can shift this forward, try it here, and you can shift it backward. I've always found that when I've done my tuning, I like having the spacer in there with that shifted back. I just really get good arrow flight off the launcher. Seems to be a good position. You can change that and move it around until you find a good spot that works best for you, depending on what arrow spine you're running, if you want to cut your arrow shorter, longer, whatever. It just gives you that option.
You said guys will call and they don't even know that exists?
Nope. People look in their package and then they don't even know that that's there.
And it makes that much difference.
Yes. I really am a big fan of that. I think it makes a big, big difference for me. All my Hoyts, I will run that on there, and I'll get that set to where it needs to be. If we use the right screw hole, be nice. That's what I do, is I run that spacer. Comes with it, fits perfect, sits and mounts flush to the riser. That way, I get that shifted back that I want, but I'm not going to get any movement in that at all. Really, really nice setup. Genius design. Not that the other rests don't work, but why not have that mated really well right there? If you wanted to, it gives you the option to run your arrow a little bit shorter. Shorter draw length, trying to get, a little bit lighter arrow, whatnot.
Yeah.
It gives you that option. So
Gotcha.
I really, really like that feature a lot. And then, like I said, with these bows, it's nice because you can just go through here. You don't have to press the bow. You just, boom, slide that up to the top of the serving, pull it snug, and then this you can do a slew of different ways, right?
Gotcha.
You can just draw it back, have it set itself, cut it and burn it, leave a little bulb right here that's burnt, and run it that way. You probably don't even need to tie it in.
And for those that are listening, what you've done is you've taken the string cable from the launcher.
Yep. From the rest itself. And on the bottom of these Hoyts, they have this new split yoke system. And what's nice about that is it's opened up above and below this little, I guess it'd be the Y splitter. What you do here is I run it through the top of the Y splitter, slide that all the way up to where the bus cable serving
Pinches it.
ends, and it pinches it. Yep. And it's actually at a good height, a little bit above the bottom of the grip. It's a good starting point to set that launcher.
Cool.
That launcher angle there. So. Does
he even know what he's talking about, Jeremiah?
we don't know. I watched YouTube this morning real quick to try to learn how to do this.
All right, so here's our paper tune right here.
Yeah,
look at that. 4 shots, and you had it tuned.
It should have been done on the first, but
if you're watching, you can see the progression here. Perfect bullet hole here. So how come you didn't get it on the first shot?
I don't know. As soon as I shot the first one, I pulled it up and I looked at your yoke. I was like, that makes sense. Just lazy on my part. Center shot it, fire it, and go. I like to have everything as centered as possible, and so I set your center shot where I felt it should be.
What you're talking about for a guy who doesn't know.
Yeah, so center shot is the direction left and right of your rest, right? Which way that arrow is going to be pointed. Knock height is going to be the adjustment here as far as rest and loop, right? So I leveled that out.
So center shot, you just lined the string up with the rest.
I eyeballed it.
So that it looks like it's center.
A lot of guys get mad about the eyeball thing. 13/16 is what a lot of manufacturer recommendation starting points. And I like to emphasize that it's only a starting point.
And how are you adjusting that?
So on this particular rest, might be hard to see here, but there is your left and right windage screw, and then you have your elevation screw here. So elevation with the cam set even, knock height I got pretty good. I started that out at a 16th knock high. Okay. Right? This is where I started on this particular bow. Once I got that set, I set the center shot, and I just eyeball it. I kind of look up through the riser, kind of look at the cam.
When you say knock high, basically the arrow is tilted a little bit downwards.
Yes.
The knock is a little higher than the tip of the arrow.
Yep.
When it's on the string.
Yep. As it comes forward, that arrow's going to oscillate. That's just usually a good spot. Again, a recommendation.
Right.
There is a lot of misconception out there as far as tuning goes. A guy will call and they'll say, well, my rest isn't perfectly at 90 off the string, right? My knocking point isn't perfect 90, and my center shot's not perfect 13/16. There's a lot of factors that play into that. Arrow cut length, string face pressure, cam system, what rest system you're running, how the chord timing is. There's a lot of stuff that plays into that. And so recommendations, starting points.
Yeah.
That ultimately told me what the bow needed to do, right? I looked at your center shot. I liked where the center shot was. I liked where this was. I could have fixed that with center shot. I could have just moved the rest and called it good, right? But that was more band-aiding what was really going on. What was really going on is this yoke system. Now, this is a really nice design, having a yoke system on a bow, because I can control this lean based off
lean of the cam.
Lean of the cam. Yep. I can control where the top and the bottom of the cam are leaned to. If they're leaned left, if they're leaned right.
So you got that tear right there.
Yes, sir.
And then you started with the center shot. That was fine.
Yeah.
So you decided, you know what, I'm going to
move the yoke.
I'm going to move the I'm going to put a twist in it.
So I did a twist and a half. That's how far off I was. And
twist to basically to take that cam and lean it a little different direction.
Yeah. So
how do you know which way to lean it?
The direction of the fletching is the side that I will twist, right? If the bow is pointed at the paper, right? If the bow is pointed at the paper, I will twist the direction of the fletching. So this was fletching on the right-hand side, knock right tear. I would put twists into the right side
yoke.
To keep your synchronization of the cams even, whatever I put in, I will generally remove that same amount from the opposite side.
Okay. So when you added a twist and took out a twist, it moved that cam over just a little bit.
Yep.
And you got a little better hole.
Yep. Got a little bit closer. So from that point, I moved it over a little bit, got a little closer. Didn't quite like this one, right? I liked where this was, so I thought, I'll move the rest a 30-second or so over.
Okay.
Walked that over, got me to this tear. Then from this point, I figured I liked where the lean was at. It was pretty straight up and down, looked really good there. So then center shot, I just bumped that out just another little teeny bit, maybe one line on this quad rest. Moved it over just one little mark, which is about an eighth or so on these guys, maybe a little under an eighth, and boom.
Perfect bullet hole.
Yep. So now we got a good center shot. It's not controlling everything. It's out where it needs to be. Cam is leaned where it needs to be, so they're working in conjunction with each other. Versus, I could have just fixed it all with this, right?
Yeah.
You could have, right? You could have just, boom, moved that way over here.
And then your cam.
But then your sight's over, your cam's leaning, and so I will set it as straight down the center of the bow as I can, with this having the least amount of movement possible.
When you say this, you're talking about the cam.
The cam. Yep. Well, I'm talking about the cam. For those of you guys that are listening, the cam system on the top, I start out as straight as possible. Now, you can lean that pretty hard. It was funny. A couple of the guys I actually worked with at Hoyt, complete opposites. One guy would have a really far right tear. One guy would have a really far left tear. They leaned the cam to one side or other, different for the individual. But they both fired very consistently for those individuals. And so, awesome system when you have a bow.
Different ways to achieve the tune.
The tune, yeah. You've got your rest. You've got the grip on this RX-3 that can shift left and right. So if I was struggling with this, or I hand it to you and you're struggling with it, and we like where that cam lean is without going too far outside of its tolerancing, we don't want to move the rest a bunch, and we can fix it with even the grip by shifting that left and right as well. So
Gotcha. Sweet. All right, so we're you got it all tuned up. We've got the same arrow I was shooting last year, which is this X-Impact Black Eagle 250 spine with the Valkyrie 200 grain tip. and I have a lighted fire knock in the back. So this is total 500 and something grains, 510?
I think it's
505?
Yeah, right around 505.
So it coming out of the new bow, it's going 270 feet per second. Out of my RX-1, which is 10 pounds heavier,
7 pounds.
7 pounds heavier, it's coming out at 280.
Yes, sir.
So about 10 feet per second slower with the lower poundage. But I'm able to shoot the exact same arrow, which I really didn't want to switch around much. I get more feet per second if I ditch that fire knock.
Yeah, if we
only
went
like 10 grains.
Yeah, if you went
Different in arrow weight.
300 spine instead of a 250, which you could probably get away with, right? We checked the tune, it'll do both. So if you did go that route, 300 spine, ditch the fire knock, and just run the 200 grains up point, yeah, you'd pick up.
We
speed.
did that. We tested it. We ran it at with a 180 grain tip and a weaker spine, a 300 spine shaft with no fire knock, and we got 280 feet per second.
Yeah.
So I could get to 280, or I can shoot the same arrow with the heavy FOC 505 grains at 270 feet per second.
Yep.
But I'm running the Garmin Zero here on this bow. I have two rigs, one with the Zero, one without. And I like you're getting single pin accuracy when you're running this generally. I'm not pin gapping much, and a lot of my shots I don't really plan on taking, long distance shots. So the trajectory on this, we talked about this. Explain why you like 280 over 270, because I do as well.
Right.
And a lot of guys may not think about what that means, and what's the difference between that and 300 or 310.
Right. Well, arrow speed is probably one of the most talked about things that we talk about in here, besides what broadhead designed to shoot, obviously. But 280 to me, I've just found over the years that it's a very controllable speed for me. Now, these bows, as technology increases, arrow technology increases, FOC, these sort of things with these arrow shafts, there are guys that are tuning fixed blade broadheads at 300 feet per second. But all those ducks got to be in a row when you're doing that, right? 280, I can usually get away with just about any broadhead. I'm not going so fast that it's hard to control, but it's not too slow that I get my trajectory. I missed the biggest deer in my life one year because I was shooting too slow. I think I was like 263. I wanted to go super heavy that year, and my arrow actually arced up higher than I'd ever shot before, arced up, hit a limb, and shot down at its feet. Then I was like, speed, right? I came back to the shop. I'm like, I'm going 300 feet per second. Everything's going speed. But then speed's almost too bad. It can hurt you as well, because if you've got brush in front of the animal and your arrow is so flat, instead of having that nice little arc, it's going to be too flat. And so 280 is just that happy medium. Randy Ulmer talks about it all the time.
Yeah, and part of it is just knowing your bow too.
Right.
What the arc looks like. You're like, it's going to hit that limb up above, or it's going to actually scoot over the top of this log between us. And I'm actually going to float it in there.
Yeah.
All that comes from experience. Shooting a lot of the TAC events, because they set up a lot of targets like that.
Yep.
You first look at a target and you're like, well, I can't hit the lungs. There's a log in front of it. But then when you account for the arc of the arrow, you're like, oh, yeah, it'll slip right over that and go in. And you practice some of that, you start to figure it out.
Yeah, 280 seemed to be that happy speed for me. I could arc over stuff. I could shoot under stuff. It was controllable. I could tune broadheads, fixed or expandable, whatever I was running. It just worked.
Well, what I like about this is my RX-1 shoots 280 feet per second with this same arrow. I'm getting 270 with the new one, but with 10 pounds lighter draw weight.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to just try a lighter draw weight. I shot the other one well last year, but it is nice to pull 70 pounds. And it just feels nice to hold, to shoot, all of that. Yep. I feel like I can hold it at full draw just that much longer and maintain a higher level of accuracy.
Yep.
And but being able to use the same arrow, I'm going to New Zealand with Ryan in about a week, and I'll bring 12, 13, 14 arrows, and they're all going to work with both bows.
Yep.
So that
simplifies it for as much
really
traveling
does.
as you're going to do.
So to build a whole new set of arrows so I can get 10 feet per second faster just isn't worth it.
Right.
And
that's where that swing was. Like, 280 is nice. Like we talk about, it's that really magical speed. But that is also a huge factor to have the same setup. You can run both. You don't have to mess with that, especially with the time crunches that you're under and not being able to travel as much. We're traveling more.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
And then when I get back, I'll toy around with a few other builds. I've got some Black Eagle, their new Extreme FOC inserts and broad, and then try to run the Blood Eagle.
Yeah.
And see how that does compared to a center pin like this Jaeger head.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm liking it. I like the fire knock. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, as we figured out today. My arrow is so powerful that it blew through the target at the paper tuning station here.
Yep.
And then had such a hard impact at the back end of the wooden wall that
we lost some of
the
it.
fire knock exploded out the back, and some of it went all the way to the tip of the shaft.
Yep.
So a little snafu today, but the arrow still nothing. The arrow didn't break.
Yeah, hit a hard spot on the target and shot it back out the back. But man, that just gives you that reassurance when you're going to go shoot at something else, animal related. Should have plenty of penetration with that setup.
Got the 0 on here, got the peep all set. Everything is ready to rock. 270 feet per second, 505 grain arrow. It's good to go.
Sight in time.
Feels good. Now I just got to dial in the sight.
Yep.
Ooh, and then Cody's going to fix up some more lighted knocks for me. They're nice because with this Valkyrie too, it's just such a micro shaft. And when I was in BC and I fired on a moose, it was a long shot, and I ranged the moose with the rangefinder, dialed the sight. I didn't have a 0 with me.
Right.
The moose, and he was broadside. He had been running away, and he finally stopped. Got everything dialed, was about to squeeze, and he ran a bunch of yards further and then stopped again. I'm like, God, no time to rearrange, to adjust the slider. So I was like, well, I want to aim on the animal still. I think he went a little bit further, so I just, instead of aiming, at the lungs, heart area, I just put it at the very top of his hump on his back there, right behind the shoulder, sent it, and it just went just under his brisket. Didn't cut anything, just went right under. And having that lighted knock, it because from the distance where I was at, it looked like it was, you know how a long shot is. It looks
like it's going to crush it.
It's going to crush it. And then it just drops so quickly that it goes from the perfect looking shot to
it drops very quickly
to just under.
Yeah.
It just misses.
Yep.
And so I'm watching it, and had I not run the lighted knock, I'd have had a really tough time seeing that I didn't hit it, because the way that boost moved, it looked like I hit him.
Yeah.
And the way the arrow looked as far as I could see it. And that's with a lighted knock.
Yep.
And I didn't have to waste any time wondering if I hit it or not. It was heavy rain and everything, and we couldn't find the arrow because there's brush,
thick,
so thick.
Yep.
And so, but it was nice because I knew I missed, and we didn't have to spend like a half a day or longer trying to figure out if I hit it or didn't hit it. And you don't want to leave, if you've.
That's the way to go. Is that fire knock system? We've been playing with a couple of the other ones. We have found more failures in a couple other ones since the last time we talked about fire knocks.
Yeah.
And the lighted knocks in general. We kind of ran into some other hiccups with some of the other brands, and so we've just kind of washed our hands clean of everything else, and we're going to do fire knock exclusively. Is the lighted knock we're going to go to. If you want it, it's the best system, right?
It's expensive.
That's the downfall. Is it is more expensive, but the capabilities that it has, being able to interchange knocks, run battery systems that are interchangeable, the way that the knock fits,
tip weighs exactly the same. So you can run. You could have just 2 lighted knocks and then have another
bunch of
practice
to save you some money.
Yeah. And you just buy a 3-pack, one 3-pack, and use that for the hunting really.
Yep.
And then just have everything else practice style in there, and then you're able to shoot the same without the cost.
The less problems down the road, or it's going to pay for itself.
It was so nice when I shot that buck Big Sexy in Ohio, that whitetail buck. I was able to see exactly where that arrow went in and where it exited. I mean, every time I've used the lighted knock, I'm like, why
wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't I?
Right.
Other than cost, because it is a cost, and you don't need it to kill.
Right.
But it does sure help with that recovery. It does let you know, like, I hit it too far back. I'm going to give it 6 hours, 8 hours. Yep. It does help you determine what you're gonna do for the recovery. Yep. It really sucks when you shoot something and you can't tell where it went in. They're like, well, where'd you hit it? And you're like,
or you think you hit it somewhere
I don't know.
It's not right where you thought, right? Because that tunnel vision comes in like we talked about, and you're like, oh, I smoked it. But then if someone videoed it, you go back and you're actually like, oh, maybe I hit it a little bit far back, or the angle wasn't quite what I thought it was.
And in low light, morning or evening, you can see that arrow too, where it can disappear into some brush, like blackberry bushes or whatnot, and you can actually just see the shaft where you would have a hard time finding that arrow.
Yep.
Without it. So then you can pull it out and go, oh, it smells like gut, or it smells like this, or, and you kind of know more.
May or may not have lost a Valkyrie the other day on the mountain. Don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that one cuts deep.
Yeah, that one hurt deep. Rookie mistake, and I launched one, and it probably is under the ground. That's why I can't find it. Because
I put a couple under the ground when I was hunting bears in BC during the practice. We were target shooting, and then the one that blew through the bear and broke both bones, it went 20 yards past the bear and then into the shoulder of a gravel road and then underground about 6 feet. And I found it by digging for it.
I know where that arrow kind of went. I'm gonna go dig, because what's funny is I found a bunch of other arrows that were just laying in the brush that you could see. Like, they've been there for a while, and I could find those, but I couldn't find my Valkyrie because I'm sure it buried.
Yeah.
So
it's tough to beat the system, but it tuned quick.
Very
ready to
quick.
go.
That tuned, 4 shots and it was going.
I'm stoked.
Very, very minimal movement. Yeah.
Super stoked.
Now just get her broke in.
Hope you enjoyed the podcast, folks. As always, we really appreciate those reviews. Go on iTunes, give us a review, and check out Wild Arrow if you live right here in Salt Lake area. These guys know what they're talking about. Right, Cody?
Yeah.
Plus Jeremiah. Jeremiah's a good dude.
Yeah.
Cody,
He's way better for the camera, but don't let him fool you. Behind the scenes, I tune his bow.
That's right. You heard it, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.